Well, hello everybody, and we're delighted to welcome you to this evening's webinar, at which the focal point is going to be the Davis programs themselves. So we're looking this evening at this question, is a Davis program right for you? An introduction for parents, for educators, and for adults exploring the Davis approach. And we're running this webinar because many families hear about Davis programs, but quite understandably wonder what actually happens in a program, who are they suitable for, and what kind of results can people expect? And one of the things that, Axel, I know you very often say about the Davis program is that the biggest problem with the Davis programs is that they sound too good to be true. So we're going to be giving you a sense as the evening progresses, a kind of a detailed and a granular sense of what you can expect after a program, ranging from what the rapid and early gains are to what are the other gains that occur over a longer period of time and are more gradual and incremental, so that you can form for yourself a full picture of what to expect. And for many families and individuals, the journey starts with struggle. So most of the people who come to us have experienced sometimes and often intense struggle in their learning and in their lives prior to coming to us. Here is Michelle, the mother of Donovan, talking about how Donovan experienced life and learning prior to his Davis program.
So, hi everyone, I'm Michelle. So I'm mum to a 12-year-old boy called Donovan. And our story really began when Donovan entered primary school. And actually, since day one of Donovan entering into the school system, he really found reading and writing quite difficult. Primary school homework was even a major cause of stress and tension in our house. It used to consume hours and hours as a whole family trying to support Donovan to get him to do his homework. He really had quite a big barrier to learning from quite a very young age. When Donovan entered year 4, things took a little bit of a kind of different turn for us. And it was the same year that the COVID lockdown happened. So as you can imagine, there was lots of online Zoom classes. There was lots of children sharing their work online. And actually, it became really apparent to me that Donovan couldn't do what everybody else was doing in the class. And actually, there was lots of children able to work independently, and Donovan wasn't quite there with the rest of his peers.
And here now is Sarah Kramer. Now, Sarah was until recently a Davis facilitator. She trained at the same time that Axel and I did. And as is common with many of the Davis facilitators in our community, Sarah's journey to Davis was as being the parent of a dyslexic son. And here Sarah is talking about how those experiences were prior to encountering Davis.
My son, when he was at preschool, was a very happy child, very social, very much part of his peer group. And we moved up into main school and he started to learn to read and write. And he began to withdraw. He lost his joy. And I used to go in and say to the teacher, I think there's something not right. He's not reading. He doesn't want to read. And they said, oh, it's because your husband's Dutch. Now, this was 22 years ago. We didn't have the internet. So I had no way of validating all these things. These were people who knew what they were talking about. You know, the headmistress told me. And eventually she pulled me to a side and she whispered that they think he's dyslexic. And I'd never even heard the word. So, and all the professionals told me that the only thing to do was phonics. So we went to a very eminent professor of phonics and we drilled him in phonics for 2 years. Every morning we'd get up and we would go through this program. And they were really dark years for our family. As you can imagine, it was a really tough thing to be doing. It had a little bit of effect in helping his reading, perhaps. But the biggest effect it had, of course, was self-confidence, because every morning I was getting up and I was asking him to do something that he was going to fail at. So we eventually ended up with a very sad child. He tried. Boy, did he put effort into his schoolwork. But despite the fact, and he was aware of this, that he was putting in more effort than anybody else, he was always bottom of the class. And eventually the school said, look, don't push him. Don't put him into a high education environment. Don't send him with all his friends to where they're going. Send him somewhere gentle because he's just not going to manage.
And here now is Tom Jameson. And Tom did a Davis program with me in 2004 when he was 19. In 2024, Tom then recorded an interview with us, which is available online, the full interview, in which he reflects on life before his Davis program, during and after his Davis program. And here's a little clip where Tom is describing his experience at school, because, of course, by the time he did his Davis program, he had already left school.
Academically, I hated school. I struggled, and because I was trying to keep my street cred, I would act up in class to hopefully be thrown out so that I wasn't embarrassed by having to read out loud to the rest of the class, or, you know, get up to the blackboard, which they were at the time, and write something. And so, yeah, I was probably, the teachers probably thought I was a really difficult kid at times, but it was mostly due to the fact that I didn't want to expose the areas that I was obviously struggling with.
And here now is Miles and his mother, Carmen, who Miles did a program with me, in fact, 2 programs, dyslexia and maths, during lockdown online, actually. He was 9 at the time. And here's mainly Carmen talking about Miles's experience prior to Davis.
I think it was me realizing how much Miles realized he was struggling with what he was needing to get through at school. And as soon as I realized how unhappy it was making him, and just thinking about it again makes me so emotional. But the struggles, and it broke my heart that he was aware that he was falling behind, that he couldn't, that he knew that there was a problem and it was impacting him. Do you remember those days?
Yeah. Well,
and he was only,
sorry?
He was young. He didn't need that, that kind of school stress at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to hear again from Miles, Tom, and as I say, from Donovan a little bit later. We played those clips really because in order to really, acknowledge how tough that struggle is for so many neurodivergent children who are desperately trying to learn in traditional mainstream learning settings. And the videos that you've just watched, they kind of epitomize the typical experiences that we find children have had before coming to us for a Davis program, children or adults indeed. So there will have been early distress and self-awareness of failure, school-related stress at a young age, homework that consumes the whole family, falling behind despite sometimes Herculean effort, often tremendous effort, loss of joy and confidence, acting out, acting up, or shutting down, and interventions that maybe have some effect, but it's like they're kind of missing the root cause of what's going on. So they're sitting, perhaps there might be a feeling as if they're sitting on top of the problem as a sticking plaster, and that can then also have knock-on effects on a person's confidence. And so at this point, when it gets to this point, it isn't just a learning issue, it's a confidence issue and also often an identity issue. You have an individual who is questioning their own learning identity and not trusting it and themselves as able to learn, which was certainly the experience of our founder, Ron Davis, and a little bit more about Ron a little bit later on. But what if these struggles aren't inevitable? So what if the issue isn't effort and it isn't intelligence, but it's something much more fundamental about how learning is happening? So, as you may know, Davis's view of dyslexia is quite different from the traditional, what we might call deficit framing. Davis sees dyslexia with all of its challenges as stemming fundamentally from a special perceptual talent. And so for us, learning difficulties are not a disability, they're a different way of thinking. struggle happens when that way of thinking is misunderstood, misjudged, or mistaught. But when we work with the dyslexic mind and not against it, everything can change. And Davis's unique insight here stems from the personal journey of Ron Davis. Functionally illiterate until the age of 38, Ron then had a personal breakthrough which enabled him to turn off the perceptual distortions which are known in the Davis approach as disorientations that lie at the heart of dyslexic challenges in reading and writing. And here's Ron Davis himself describing that breakthrough moment.
What I initially discovered was how to turn off disorientation. And I had been trying to read for as long as I could remember and struggling and not able to do that. But when I turned off the disorientation, I could see the words clearly. The words on the bottom of the page were just as big as the ones on the top. There were spaces between the words, there were spaces between the letters. So you didn't have to try to figure out where one word ended and the next one began. I learned how to turn that off. I went to a library and I read a book from cover to cover in one day. Now, I never dreamed of the ability to read a whole book here, much less do it in one day. I mean, for me, that kind of a dream would have been a nightmare. I never prayed for the ability to read a whole book. I didn't think that was the kind of prayer that God would answer. So on that day, one day in my life, I had an experience that was beyond my ability to dream and beyond my ability to pray. And as a result of that experience, something happened. It was the first day of my life that I considered myself to be a real whole human being. I wasn't a mistake that God made, or I wasn't a mistake that some doctor made by pinching my brain and ruining it. I was a real human being.
Incidentally, if any of you are able to attend our Davis Neurodiversity Day on Saturday, which you may have seen references to in our communications, aside from 5 presentations, which will include presentations by Axel and by me, in the evening I will be reading from Ron Davis's autobiography Dummy, including the passage about that actual breakthrough. So if you're able to make it on Saturday, we would love to see you there. And we are hoping, I've got both sets of fingers crossed here, that the book might actually be out on Saturday by the time of the event. If it isn't, it'll be out the next week, within a matter of a day or two after. So more on that later. So who do Davis programs help? Well, both children and adults. Ron's own lived experience was the starting point of the Davis program, and the first people who experienced the program were actually adults. So it's one of the rare programs that was designed by an adult initially, perhaps for himself, then other adults, and was then adapted for children, as opposed to the other way around. So it's very much a program that helps children and adults. The oldest client I ever worked with was 85. Axel, I believe you might be able to top that.
I'm not sure I can top that. I think it was 75.
75, but you've worked with 3 generations, haven't you, from the same family?
I have, yes. Grandmother, mother, and daughter.
Yeah. So it's never too late with Davis. So, and children and adults struggling with literacy or numeracy, teenagers whose confidence in learning overall has dropped, including their ability to study and assimilate subject-specific material, aside from, the core issues around literacy and numeracy. People with dyslexia, attention challenges, including ADHD and/or dyscalculia, and people with executive function challenges and/or autistic individuals. Now, this whole range is not helped by the same approach, but within Davis, we have a range of different approaches which are tailored to whatever neurodivergent profile a person has, ranging across from dyslexia right over to the autism spectrum. And Davis programs do not require a diagnosis of a learning difficulty. This is a question that is often asked of us. So there can be a rationale to obtaining a diagnosis as your kind of passport to being acknowledged, helped, and supported as you move on through life. But it's a quite different issue than the question of a of an intervention, which is what Davis is, which will actually then give you real rapid progress, if you like, in the areas that you're experiencing challenge in. So we have our own criteria for determining the suitability of a program. We always start with an initial, typically around about 2-hour fact-finding meeting that we call an initial program assessment. And that's a meeting at which we apply our own criteria. And at the end of that meeting, we will then advise whether we feel a program would be suitable. And if so, which one or which combination of what we can offer and in which order. And so Davis really fundamentally is a different starting point. So instead of asking, how can we prop up your learning, we're asking, what is happening inside of your thinking when confusion appears, and how can that be resolved? So essentially, not how do we, sort of support, enable the learner to cope, but what's actually happening inside of your thinking. So we're engaging with your thinking moment to moment, and your thought processes and your mental reactions to things in a way that enables us to help you track back to the root cause and causes of what's going on for you. Now, key principles in a Davis program. We have a set of tools that collectively we sometimes call the orientation tools. It's essentially a set of self-regulation or mental self-management tools that enable a person to switch easily and effortlessly between the more creative mindset that we call disorientation and the more accurate and receptive mindset that we call orientation. Now, one of the hallmarks of neurodivergent thinking, including dyslexia, is that neurodivergents are expert at disorientation, which is part of the reason why you will find neurodivergent individuals in many innovative careers and professions. Where things can go wrong is if a person does not have conscious control and is not able to switch at will between disorientation and orientation, depending on the demands of the task at hand. And so the orientation tools enable a person to stabilize their perception and their focus. And so Davis is one of perhaps the rare approaches to dyslexia and other learning differences that starts by looking at your perception, that the root of what is going on is essentially in perceptual distortion. Your mind is not seeing what your eyes are seeing. It's not hearing what your ears are hearing. That's why you're making what are known as mistakes. So that then is our starting point. And once you have the orientation tools, you then start using the tools to identify moments of confusion. Here's Tom, who you saw earlier on video. That's Tom a little after his program came back to do a photo shoot. And this is Tom with his alphabet. Okay, and so one of the first things we do in a dyslexia program is enable a person to make all of the individual symbols that they're seeing on the page when they're reading, and then using their mental orientation tools to experience what happens to your mind when you encounter each of these symbols, which of these symbols are provoking disorientation in you and switching on perceptual distortion, and then what do we do about it? Okay, so these all get mastered here, punctuation marks as well, getting mastered in, and you'll notice the use of white plasticine clay as the kind of the signature Davis learning medium, which is extremely powerful. You'll see a little bit more about that later. Okay, here's the numerals together with their meaning in clay balls as numbers or as quantities. And so we're building understanding. Here's some more maths work using actual quantities made in clay. So we're building understanding through hands-on methods. Okay, so a Davis program is not, as you're probably seeing, it's not tutoring. It's not repetitive practice. It's about removing the cause of confusion and having a single high-quality experience rooted in your own creativity around the thing that you're learning, which in Davis we call the concept of mastery. So if traditional approaches are about practicing the skill, Davis is about resolving confusion, and then accelerated practice or even a single experience will be enough for the material to be mastered. If a traditional approach might be about phonics and repetition, Davis is always about experiential mastery, very often through the white plasticine clay. So Davis at every turn is about aha moments. which dyslexics and other neurodivergents excel in. It's about using the imagination as the key learning tool, and about making learning memorable as opposed to memorized. Traditional approaches very often will result in, consciously or unconsciously, a kind of a messaging that, okay, well, if I try really hard and I keep trying even harder and even harder, then I might get somewhere. Whereas in Davis, our success criterion is that it's easy. So if what you're learning isn't easy by the end of a program, then we haven't done our job properly. A little bit more about that later. Okay, so that it becoming easy is one of the key success criteria for what we're doing. Okay, it's part of why we call ourselves facilitators, because facilitator comes from facilis in Latin, which means easy. Okay, and if a traditional approach is about kind of managing symptoms, coping strategies, and so on, Davis is always about lasting change. So the principle that we're applying is that a different way of thinking requires a different way of learning. So let's look a little bit more at a different way of thinking. Some of you may have seen already the multi-award-winning film Who Knew, which was produced by our amazing colleagues in Canada at the Whole Dyslexic Society. If you haven't yet seen it, here's a little clip. If you want to see the whole film, by the way, we're screening it again in our NeuroNavigators platform on the 8th of April. So if you haven't yet seen it, there'll be an opportunity to do that later on. But here's just a little clip for now.
They said he has dyslexia, and that really surprised me because I didn't know that I didn't know what dyslexia is.
Julie was.
I didn't know that it was a completely different way of thinking.
When you close your eyes, can you imagine your bedroom, for example? Yeah? What is actually doing the looking? Could it be part of your brain? We have people who are predominantly sound thinkers and people who are predominantly image-based and feeling thinkers.
For, a simple 20-word spelling test, my mom and I would study for like 10 hours and I'd get 2 right.
I see the children who are completely and utterly convinced that they're stupid. And I just can't handle that anymore because it's the opposite of the truth. They're incredibly intelligent, creative individuals, but they learn in a different way to the way they're taught.
And once again, if you haven't yet seen the whole film, we can discuss in the Q&A afterwards how you can join us on the 8th of April to see it in full. It's about 35 minutes. So what happens in a Davis program? Well, it's usually delivered over several intensive days. And again, here we differ from traditional tutoring models because Davis isn't about drill and repetition. It's about habituating a whole new way of using your mind and of how you learn. And therefore, working with somebody over 5 consecutive days full time is far, far more effective than seeing somebody for an hour a week. And then the next week, it's like, okay, well, what did we do last time? Let's recap. Let's try and remember it. It takes much longer to habituate something if you're only seeing us for an hour in a week and all of the rest of the week is in the old patterns. So that's why we do that. And that also means that many of our programs, as you'll see later, are about delivering rapid and fast track success and progress. The program is always one-to-one with a trained Davis facilitator, usually with a level of family involvement, however, particularly when the client is a child, the person we're working with, involvement by the family and or other supportive adults is a really important part to what we do. It's highly practical and interactive, and there's follow-up support and practice afterwards, and we will also train one or more designated adults or family members as what we call support persons to assist in the support process afterwards. So here's a little slightly outdated video that shows what happens in a Davis program. Okay, but it's quite a kind of a nice and efficient little window into how it actually is. So I'll just play this to you.
You are a lamb, meaning a young sheep. You say lamb.
So that's what we call a trigger. And so I'm going to ask you to pick that M up and put it in your hand.
The Davis Dyslexia Correction Program teaches dyslexic learners to erase the negative characteristics of dyslexia without disturbing the positive side.
What do you see?
Davis clients learn a powerful system for mastering written words and symbols. They practice simple techniques to read more accurately and with full comprehension.
Wanting. Did your mind's eye move?
I think so.
When dyslexics complete the Davis program, they have the tools to control dyslexia and are ready to accept greater responsibility for their own learning process.
Now, whose is this?
This is mine.
And how come?
Because I made it.
Yes, you did.
A Davis program consists of 5 consecutive days of counseling and instruction with a licensed Davis facilitator. After the program, a period of consistent follow-up work and practice at home and in everyday life assures long-term success.
So, typical outcomes of a Davis program would be greatly enhanced, really greatly enhanced literacy and or numeracy, depending on what the brief was for the program. Improved focus and self-regulation, better understanding of words and language, and above all, a new sense of control over your learning and of empowerment. So, typical outcomes. Let's just look at these. And Axel, do chip in if you, this is sort of my view, my experience of what tends to be the case. And Axel, I'd be interested to know if you concur or if you, see any of these, differently in any way.
Sure.
So there's the program that we call Davis Mastery for Dyslexia is focused on reading and writing, and sometimes handwriting. And typically there are rapid gains in reading. And as I said earlier, I only feel that I've done my job properly as a Davis facilitator if reading has not just become significantly better, but also easier. So the general pattern that occurs is that somebody will come, an individual will come to a program, and if it's a child, perhaps aged 10 or 11, we might be starting the program working on books that were written for perhaps 6 or 7-year-olds. That is the typical experience. So we're starting off at the level of reading that is possible for that individual, right then. By the end of a program, very often a person is reading at their age level. But whereas at the beginning of the work, reading was really, really hard, by the end of the week, it's feeling easy. And as I say, I expect there to be this leap of typically, a few years in reading ability, but also a real reduction in stress and a feeling that, I can do this and I can just sort of glide through it. And that is usually occurs in the course of the program itself, while we're working with an individual. What I didn't actually have here is handwriting. And Axel, maybe you could comment on what we typically see if handwriting is one of the program goals.
Yeah, handwriting is often kind of related to dyspraxia, handwriting issues, and which is hand and eye coordination issues. And but it doesn't add much. It might add a day to dyslexia program if you're adjusting the handwriting as well. And that essentially makes handwriting legible, effortless, and easy, just like you said. And I was just thinking about this, outcome for the dyslexia program. A lot of parents experience homework as maybe 2 hours of frustration between parent and child before a program. And after a program, that same homework will very often be half an hour of effortless ease.
Yeah, there will be savings in that. And there are areas that are more gradual, in my experience, to come right. And one of those areas is spelling. And that also depends on the age at which you're doing the program. If you're at primary school and you're being given 5 or 10 spellings to learn each week, you can get an immediate uplift by using the Davis clay-based approach to master those spellings. And I have worked with many primary school clients who are then finding that they're moving from maybe 2 out of 10 in a weekly test up to 9 out of 10 or or 10 out of 10. If you're coming in as a secondary school child or teenager or as an adult, you will have a much greater backlog of spellings that you don't know. And therefore, in that case, the gains are usually much more gradual. But what we can do is we can teach you how to master a given word with certainty, and then how to kind of create like a funnel that you can use in order to capture one by one the words that you need to be able to spell, kind of in order of priority, and then have a multi-layered approach to mastering those. So that's not always in the clay, because there's quite a large mass of those, but the clay remains the kind of backstop and your kind of last best option for the words that are the really tough ones. We also have a program, Davis Mastery.
Can I just
just
jump in? I think it's an interesting kind of piece of information that during a dyslexia program, in my experience, you may have a slightly different experience, but the amount of reading over 30 hours of Davis dyslexia program for dyslexia is maybe not more than 1 hour out of the 30.
Yes, it probably is about that. I've never really counted it, but
no.
Yes, an hour to an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, because we're putting in all of the layers underneath of the reading that have been causing the problems, and then it can kind of take off. Yeah, absolutely. We also have a program for maths, Davis Mastery for Maths, and typically there we see rapid gains in mental and written arithmetic and in time awareness. Sometimes multiplication and division can take a little longer to embed. Sometimes they come very quickly. Addition and subtraction up to quantities of 100 mentally is usually pretty solid by the end of the time that we're working with somebody. And also the opportunity, the ability to do written operations usually comes very quickly. More gradual will be gains in maths topics, in word problems, and also in consistency of focus, because one of the key challenges actually that can occur in maths is that you have the mathematical ability, but you have glitches in your focus while you're trying to solve the task. And those glitches, which in Davis, of course, we call disorientations, can then create inconsistency and mean that you end up with a wrong answer to something that you had the ability to actually do. And that is also a process of habituating the tools, over time, and then the gradual success builds the momentum. Davis Mastery for Attention, which is our approach for ADHD and related attention focus challenges. Typically, I see rapid gains in time awareness, in self-awareness, in energy management, and in the ability to create and maintain order in a physical space, such as a bedroom that prior to a program might have been chaotic and after the program is tidy. More gradual might be gains in impulsivity or impulse control, in sequential logic, in seeing cause and effect in social and other situations, and in maintaining sustained focus, particularly in areas that have been challenging for the individual traditionally. Axel, would you agree with that sort of pattern?
Yes, and the one thing which is kind of included there is that there's ADHD people tend to experience a lot of unintended consequences in their lives, and that is one of the things that improves the most.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've entitled this slide short-term gains, but actually what we're talking about here is early gains that then maintain. Here's just a few examples. This was a client on the left who I worked with online during lockdown. He was 13 when he did his dyslexia program, and his reading age had been tested as being at age 10 prior to the program, prior to the summer holidays. We did the program in the summer holidays. In September, he messaged me and said he now had an age of 13, and he was really pleased by that. And on the right is a boy I worked with who was 15 at the time. He did a Davis Autism program with me first, and then Davis Dyslexia. And so his mother says he's reading Harry Potter on a Kindle with a dyslexia font on it. He's read half of it in a week, and interestingly, he said he's able to read the sentence only once and absorb the information. I can't believe he's reading Harry Potter. We've given him the Kindle to use for all reading. Local behavioural optometrist gave him an aqua overlay, which also improved the speed he reads and the accuracy. It's one hell of a magic trick you did, Richard. Thank you so very much. Here, this was a boy, an 8-year-old boy with really, really severe challenges to reading and writing. And so I don't know how legible this is, but this boy had he'd gone from 2.1 before his program to 2.6 as a reading level, whereas in the 12 months prior, he'd only moved up 2 levels. And he then moved up 5 levels in the course of, basically the period, from before to after his program. And then things continued on the right, family talking, that he's doing fabulously, reading alone nicely, had a reading exam at school yesterday. He's just progressed up another level. And so he passed his times tables test as well. He worked really hard on it to pass, so his confidence is high. Coupled with maths, this was a boy who had been diagnosed with dyscalculia just before his maths program with me, and he had failed the common entrance exam, which is the 13+ exam for independent schools. He failed the practice, the mock exam in the January on, I think he got 19%. And then after his programs, this was messaging, you see, June 2022, he emerged with 62%, and he passed and he got into the school he wanted to get to. And so he's been on great he's been on great form. It feels like all the exams have gone well. And factorizing, which he couldn't do before, which he could now do. And then on the right, another maths, parent of a maths client, says the Davis Maths Mastery course matched the pace my child needed to learn. I witnessed my son grasp concepts with speed and clarity, growing in confidence. I'm straining slightly because of the size of the text here on my screen, and an excitement to learn more. Maths very quickly became his favorite subject. We were both blown away by how quickly years of lost learning were set in a foundation which became easy to build upon. And the most moving quote I've ever received, I think, from a maths client is the sentence a little bit lower, where his mother says he can't remember the time he did not understand maths. And that's truly wonderful. A couple of, I'm just going to increase my screen size. So in terms of the attention program, a couple of shots from parents. She's definitely finding ways of incorporating your work into her life in terms of finding ways to do things on her terms with her life force. We're talking about it a lot, Anne. You're a huge part of our lives, improving already. Cleans her room a lot more and thinks ahead in situations, which I'm shocked by. Sets alarms to remind herself of things. Unprecedented. She also told me she found motivation to clean and organize things. So if you might remember at the beginning, we saw Michelle talking about Donovan's experiences prior to Davis' program. Now here's Donovan himself talking about how it was with the program itself.
I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't do any of it.
And then in year 4 you did a Davis program. What did you do on your Davis program?
Sometimes I do it with like a tutor from Davis online on Zoom and stuff, because at the time I think it was COVID.
Yes.
And we just did a bunch of words that I thought I didn't know how to spell, or even words that I did know how to spell. And basically we did that every night, and then I got better and better, and we also wrote down the words. And I used to picture the clay models that I made, like, I can still remember one now, over. So basically, I made this Tesla Cybertruck running over someone.
And you remember the word over now?
Yeah, I remember
Even,
it.
what's that, 2.5 years later?
2.5 years, yeah.
Fantastic, good. And when you went back to school, things were a bit different for you then. Did you find life easier?
Yeah, it was so much easier. I read this 257-page book, which is this one, and I thought it was good because it was my first book I've ever read like by myself without any help, and I just felt so proud of myself.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Donovan.
Thank you, see you later.
So we want you to hear a couple more voices from first-hand voices of experience of the program. And so here's Carmen and Miles again.
He has a quiet confidence about him. He does his homework by himself without being asked. He takes an interest in learning. He takes an interest in reading, although doesn't really read for pleasure as much as I would like him to, but I'm wondering if that's a boy thing more than anything. Miles was chosen to do a reading course with the school recently over an 8-week period. And part of that was needing to read out aloud, which we were initially against because of the dyslexia. And the school assured us that he wouldn't have to read aloud in front of anybody other than the teacher. So we agreed that he could participate. And as part of the program, he had to read aloud at home 3 times a week, 3 different A4 sheets, full A4 sheets of a story. And I was blown away again by how well he could read that, and that there were, some of the words that he might have stumbled on were very unusual names of places that I would have struggled with as well. The speed of the reading, the pronunciation of the words blew me away. One of the key observations from me with the course is that we were able to plug a huge gap in Miles' learning in English and in maths. And over the course of the past 3 years, he on his own has plugged any gaps in other subjects with tremendous accuracy and speed by being given the tools to read and apply what he's learning and understand what he's learning, learning the tools of being able to retain what he's learning. And that he has gone from being unbelievably behind to being securing plus or exceeding the expectations that the school and that we have for him, and that I think he indeed has for himself. Question was, where do you think you would have been if you didn't do the course?
Yeah, I wouldn't be as confident I would be in my work now. Like, be a lot lower as well. I'll be at my target instead of, because my target's a lot higher now than it would be before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the school, whenever we say Miles has dyslexia, I think they go, not so sure.
So I've titled that slide Midterm Gains, because Miles was 9 when he worked with me, and this was 3 years later, as you heard. So he's 12 here. Interestingly, I've never met Carmen or Miles face to face, because we were working during COVID and all of our work was online. So Miles had to put up with me for about 70 hours across the 2 programs online, and it worked remarkably well. And here now is one of Axel's clients, Samuel, or Sam does he call himself?
Sam.
Sam, yeah. And Axel, do you want to say anything briefly about Sam?
Well, I think the clip will explain quite a lot. He's a son of friends of mine that I worked with now. I just went to his engagement party a couple of weeks ago, and he came to me at the age of 10 with literally, well, he will probably explain in the video. And this was 10 years later.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
100% in history exams, even though I love the subject, and we couldn't actually work out why. After meeting with teachers, headmasters, parents, and they were like, well, Sam loves the subject, he can talk about it forever, but he can't get anything down on a piece of paper. And so we decided, I think it was then and there, that enough was enough. And I think after several sessions with special education needs at the school, we worked out that it probably was dyslexia. And so then we came to see you.
And we worked together for about 5 days?
Yeah, 4 or 5 days, I think, definitely. It was over a course of a week, so I think, yeah, Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of very useful techniques, and I think what is so brilliant about the techniques is that at first, sort of, you might think, oh, I can't do this every single time, or this is purely ridiculous, but after you do them maybe 15, 20 times, you stop thinking about it. You stop sort of having to manually process it, and it becomes automatic.
Like a habit.
Exactly. And I think it has helped me immeasurably, quite frankly. I mean, sort of, as soon as we finished doing the sessions, over that summer, I was then in sort of year 7. I was then considered a candidate to go to one of London's best secondary schools. I then got into that secondary school early. We didn't do it at the time when everyone else did it. We did it actually 6 months early.
We generally expect to see at least 2 grade level reading improvement immediately over the 5 days.
So that was then 4 years after we'd worked with each other. I then went to get 7 A stars and 4 A's at GCSE.
Wow.
And then I went on to get A's at A level, which is for me. And I was doing history. I did history. I did 3 essay subjects at A level.
Yeah.
And to think 8 or 9 years ago I couldn't write an essay is actually extraordinary. Come to think,
so going from 15%
to 95%.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And these are 3,500 to 4,000 word essays in time conditions.
Yeah,
which is extraordinary.
Mm. Just to say a little bit, just like Tom has his own business, that Sam has now just set up his own business in property management.
Oh, how interesting. Yes, and Tom is owner of Jameson Gym, which is a very prominent fitness and gym center in Kent. And in order to get there, he had to obtain a raft of qualifications, which he had felt were quite out of his reach prior to doing the Davis program. And here's just a brief clip of Tom talking about what the program did for him.
Don't get me wrong, there's been ups and downs, and there's no fast road to success. It's definitely been a snakes and ladders story over the last 20 years. But the real getting on the board to start to play the game was the Davis course, and that gave me my entry in order to be able to start this process, in order to try to be the person that I aspired to be or thought I could be. But the Davis course for me was the real, it was like getting on the board game of life to start taking your journey. And up until that point, I didn't have a ticket.
Okay, so if you decide to progress with the Davis program, then this is kind of how it works. So this is what happens next. So the first step would be an initial discovery call, which we offer to you for free for typically sort of up to half an hour. And that gives you an opportunity to really, have a personal chat with one of our team about Davis, our programs and workshops. Okay. And then you can start to get a sense of whether Davis is right now for you or your child, and if so, which Davis solution or solutions could be of value. Then you would move on to a face-to-face meeting with a facilitator. It can be over Zoom, but it's a personal meeting that we call an initial assessment, conducted with the person who's going to be doing the program. So if it's your child, then your child would be kind of center stage in that. The facilitator then makes recommendations based on the initial assessment. If you decide to book a program, then you go ahead and do that. And the program is delivered one-to-one by an expert facilitator. It can be in person or online. Dyslexia typically takes around 30 hours. Attention is also typically around 30 hours. Maths is longer if it's your starting point with Davis. And then there's a follow-up process after the program where we train a support person and we provide telephone, email support, post-program, and access to follow-up review sessions. Very often these are on Zoom, but they can also be in person, depending on, on what you might need. So we're just hand-holding you a little bit after the program, troubleshooting anything that might not work immediately as you go back into your main learning environment and so on. And so we have programs for dyslexia, attention, maths, and also a young learner program called Foundations for Reading, which is a best start program for literacy for children aged 5 to 7. The other programs are typically for age 8 and upwards through into adulthood. We also have a program for autism, and if that is an interest, there's a slightly different route for that. But if you can tell us that, then we will also be able to guide you on how to access that. Most of our facilitators will allow the cost of the program to be spread over time. And that means that a dyslexia or an attention program can be accessed for £306 a month for 10 months. That's in the UK. Now, in other parts of the world, such as Africa, you'll find that we have adaptive pricing. So we are a non-profit organization, And as part of our mission, we want the program to be accessible. We also work with our sister charity Gifts for Dyslexia, and can provide program bursaries in certain situations where a family's or an individual's financial circumstances would otherwise block them from accessing the program. And if that's the case, we invite you to reach out and let us know. And as we say, the first step is a discovery call or an expert consultation. And as we move on now to questions, I'm going to just bring up a little form onto the screen, which you're welcome to use if you would like to request an initial consultation from us. So that would be worth doing if you are at a point where you're really feeling, okay, I do want to find out more. I really am thinking this might be for me, but I want to have a personal conversation, before we move forward. And so if I can just set that up now. Interesting, the Zoom interface has all changed from what it had been. Here we are. Yeah, so there should be now a little pop-up form appearing on your screen. And if you fill that in, then one of our team will be in contact with you by email or phone, or we often use WhatsApp just to drop a message if you're happy for us to do that, and coordinate a time to talk. And that initial call is free, and in the course of that call, we'll listen to you, hear what you have to tell us about your circumstances, give you an initial sense of whether we think Davis is suitable, and if so, what path. And then if you want to move on to an initial meeting with a facilitator, we can also set that up for you. So do feel free to fill that in if that would be helpful. And as we're doing so, we're happy to stay on for any questions. And I'm going to invite you, if you would like to be on camera and just chatting with us informally, if you can just type the word speak into chat. I'm just going to do that now so you can see what I mean. Okay, so I just put speak into chat, and if you would like to be on camera, then feel free to type speak, and then we will enable that to happen. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay in the background and to ask questions via the typing questions into the Q&A box as we go along. So okay, are there any questions at this point? Or have we overwhelmed you all? Is that form showing okay on the screen? I just want to make sure everybody has access to it. Yeah, okay, perfect. Great. Okay. It doesn't look like right now that we've got any questions. Axel, is there anything that comes to mind for you, after what we've just discussed this evening that you want to add in?
Not immediately. It might be kind of surprising for people to think that whether this is actually possible to do this, have this dramatic improvement in such a short time. I can see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the little clip, that's why we wanted to sort of give you some experience firsthand from people who've experienced the program, so that you could kind of get a sense of that. It really is. It's rapid because it's getting to the root cause, and it's eliminating the reasons why the problem was there in the first place. So when you don't do that, you're constantly battling to put strategies in place that will then be, sort of overwhelmed by the problem itself, which is still persisting. So you have to sort of keep that. That's why drill and repetition then becomes, the kind of the hallmark, perhaps of some approaches. Whereas here, we start by eliminating the cause, and then because neurodivergent individuals are bright and almost always bright and intelligent individuals, then your natural intelligence can start to do the job that it was designed to do in the reading process, writing, numeracy, and so on. Something I wanted to maybe just briefly show you all was our NeuroNavigators platform. So some of you may have already come across NeuroNavigators. It's our new community platform, which is free to join. And it's what we're trying to turn it into is a kind of a warm space where people can communicate. Okay, and what you have here is a community discussion, which is constantly being updated. Here I was posting about tonight's webinar. Some of you might have seen that. We have polls that my colleague Anne-Marie regularly posts. We have little thought pieces, and what you can also get if you join the community is a little kind of gift to you, is a little free 15-part dyslexia awareness course called A Taste of Davis, which you can access as a video and/or as a PDF handout. So if you're here as an educator, it becomes something that you can also pass around colleagues, for example, or as a parent, you can pass it to teachers. And then we also have some of our past webinars. Here's Tom's full interview, whom you saw earlier. And at the weekend, we're going to be launching NeuroNavigators Club, which will be a kind of premium version where for a small monthly fee, you'll be able to access much, much more, like a bank of 25 webinars and more expert insights and podcasts in the future and so on. But more about that coming up. And if you haven't yet joined NeuroNavigators and would like to, I'm going to just drop the link into the chat for that. And as I say, it's completely free, free forever, the community. So do feel free to hop on board. We'd love to see you there.
And I can see that there are comments in the chat.
Yes.
Talking about looking at this from a teacher's perspective, and that's a really interesting aspect because Davis is essentially a way of creating a truly neuro-inclusive classroom. And our experience with using Davis in teaching reading in a classroom is when we train teachers to use this in a classroom, very quick and easy training, we tend to see remedial recommendations or remedial requirements drop dramatically. And the Taste of Davis is also very good for kind of secondary, isn't it? Primarily secondary school.
That's Davis Learning Power. The Taste of Davis is just a simple kind of awareness course. But yeah, we do have a course, as Catherine's aware, who posted in the chat, which is very much tailored for secondary and sixth form, and we're also interested in the potential for higher education of that course. So, okay.
Then there's a question. I'm missing information about autism in this webinar, but expected it would be in it as well.
Okay. The focal point of this webinar is not autism, but we do have information about autism. I mean, we could say a word about the autism approach is a little bit different in the way that it's structured. It's more, it's a slightly longer term process, and journey with your facilitator. And the first stage is in autism is a process that we call individuation, which is about using the Davis orientation tools in order to sort of complete your awareness of being an individual that is separate from everyone and everything else. So you're developing a kind of a consistency of the perceptual point from which you're experiencing the world, okay, which often has been very mobile and agile in an autistic individual. And so once that is then stabilized, that then becomes a platform on which we can then enable you to build what we call a core identity. And that then is a process using a combination of play and real world explorations to explore the fundamental God's laws, if you like, or the fundamental laws of what it is to be human in this physical world alongside other humans. And that's built up in a specially tailored sequence so that you can complete any pieces that possibly hadn't been fully there or fully integrated into your thinking. The aim is not to make you into a neurotypical individual. We would never want to do that. But the aim is for you, is for an autistic individual who is struggling to become an autistic individual who isn't struggling and who's participating fully in the life that they choose for themselves. So, and there's a lot more information online about that. So do reach out if that's something, that you feel according to.
And of course, the event on Saturday is all about, well, neurodiversity in general, including autism.
Yeah. And I'm seeing we've also got somebody, lovely to see your comments, Leslie. That would be fabulous. That would be totally fabulous. And thank you so much. This has been so interesting and has been so helpful in understanding my son's dyslexia and why the phonic approach has never worked. It's given me so much hope. Oh, I'm so pleased. That's justified hope is the greatest thing that we want to give to you all from this from this experience. Okay. So on that note,
there are a couple of more questions in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Here's a question: where can I watch the movie on the 8th of the 4th?
If you join Neuronavigators using the link that I popped in the chat earlier, I'll just show you actually, so that once you're in there, you're not lost. Somebody's just joined. I can hear ping. That's great. So if you join Neuronavigators, then you go to events, and you'll see there our Saturday Neurodiversity Day, and also Who Knew, and that's the film showing. And all you have to do is to go in here and to go RSVP and say that you're going. And then you will have the Zoom link appear here. And when you click on that, that will give you your link to the screening on the day. So listen, should be simple. We have some more questions.
Yes.
My grandson is suffering from EBSNA caused by dyslexia dyscalculia. His anxiety is now lessening, but I'm not sure whether he could cope with a 5-day intensive course at this stage. He's 9 years old. Would it be better to wait until he's steadier and better able to cope? Or are there instances where the 5 days could be spread over a longer period? Now, absolutely, absolutely, we can tailor the program and we can spread it. With a 9-year-old, something that can often work quite well would be something like for example, a 4-hour day where we have 2 hours in the morning, and then a nice long lunch break for an hour and a half, and then 2 hours in the afternoon. We can also do, even less than that, 1.5 and 1.5, or just mornings only. There is value in not spreading it so far out that by the time you come back, you've forgotten what you did the last time. So we're looking for continuity, but we will absolutely tailor what we're doing to what works. And that's one of the very things that comes out of the initial program assessment meeting. That's your facilitator's opportunity to meet with you and your child, and then we can give you a really informed view of what we think is going to work.
And if I just jump in on the back of that, the question is it better to wait or not? I would say absolutely not to wait, as long as there's some motivation there. And because the longer you wait, the more pain builds up, really, when we can essentially remove that pain. And then there's another question. Is there any teaching material for TEFI teachers specialized in special educational needs? Is it TEFL, maybe? I don't know what TEFI is.
Maybe you can qualify that for us, whether we're talking about teaching English as a foreign language or something different here. Specialized in SEN. If a teacher cannot afford the cost of a workshop or becoming a Davis facilitator. This is my chance to do a little sales pitch, isn't it? Because there's the book, The Gift of Dyslexia, which is Ron Davis's book, and that contains complete instructions for the dyslexia procedures. My book, Why Tyrannosaurus But Not If, contains some sample kind of neuro-inclusive lesson plans, as well as says a number of thought pieces in there about what's going on and why is learning challenging for neurodivergence. And then we have in there also some lesson plans, some of them using the clay. So I'm just going to see if I can type a quick link to that into the chat. And in terms of dyscalculia, counting on fingers does the same thing. So if I just pop that into the chat. And also, if you're browsing the gift of dyslexia, gift of learning, both by Ron Davis, and counting on fingers, which is jointly by Ron and me, and also fish don't climb trees.
Yeah, and there's a question in the chat. Can you explain the disorientation more? Now, disorientation is essentially, it can look from the outside as if you have lost your focus or drift off. For example, with ADHD children, that's very obvious. What disorientation is essentially an effort to resolve confusion. And it's a problem-solving tool that can be very useful for creative purposes. But in a learning environment, it's essentially going into almost like into your internal world to try and figure something out. And in doing so, it's a little bit like switching channels on the TV. You switch off from the real world into your imaginary world, and therefore you miss out on what might be happening. And another example of that is that another symptom of that is a distorted perception, that sounds can be too loud or too quiet. The way Ron described that his letters and words were floating around on the page, that's a symptom of disorientation. It's a distorted perception. And you probably will have experienced one symptom of dyslexia, which is that late at night you're reading a book in bed perhaps, and you come to a bottom of a page, and you suddenly realize that even though your eyes were scanning every word, you stopped taking anything in. And if you're not dyslexic, you can just solve the problem by closing the book and getting a good night's sleep. But that's the kind of experience that the dyslexic is experiencing all the time. And the cause is disorientation, essentially loss of focus. It was a very brief description of disorientation.
Fabulous. Yeah. There's a question as to whether there are facilitators in Germany, and I just glibly said yes, but now I'm just putting a link into the chat that you can use in order to search for one of our colleagues in Germany.
There's also a question about Ghana, whether there's any help available in Ghana.
There is in Accra. Our wonderful colleague Joy Thomas, and if you complete you can find her in the directory, I think, but alternatively, if you complete the pop-up form and mention that that's what you're looking for, then we can put you in touch.
Yes, she has set up a school that is based on Davis from the ground up.
Yes. Yeah, with a couple of members of staff trained in the teaching applications.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. So if just one last thing before we sign off, if we sign off before any of you have been able to, complete a request for a consultation that, that via the form that's up on the screen at the moment, if you bookmark this link, which I've just put in, then you're very welcome to use that in order to reach out to us. And so particularly the person who needs help in Ghana, you could do that if you can't find Joy on the main directory. Okay. So thank you all very much. It's been really great to be with you this evening. We do hope that this has been helpful. We do hope we'll see you again, maybe on Saturday at the Neurodiversity Day, maybe on the 8th of April at the film screening. Hopefully beyond that in Neuronavigators community and at further events to come. And we hope we'll be of help to you. So all the best, everyone, and see you again soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.